management, stuff like that. So it's not like a really pretty app. It's more enterprise B2B type stuff, but it's really fun just kind of designing stuff for, you know, an industry that's really popular, especially nowadays. Working on like a project now for, you know, shop online, pick up curbside, developing that because that's becoming more popular with the times and everything going on. So yeah, really enjoying it. And yeah, everything went well with the boot camp and stuff. So good to be here.
Great. Alex, are you free to introduce yourself?
I am. Hello. I'm Alex, and this is Giselle. We're putting our LinkedIn's in the thing in the chat right now. What?
I said hi, Amanda. She was waving.
I was like, yeah. Hey, Giselle.
I started off as a graphic designer, and then I moved into UX design through the lens of conversion optimization. Back before SEO was like a household term, and now I'm a product manager. We both work at a place called Storable, which is formerly known as Sparefoot, which is a sort of a unicorn of a startup here in Austin that's grown up and gotten funding and everything. And I also teach a UX design class at UT, which is how I know Amanda. She TAs the class as well. So, or TAs a class. Do you want to give your?
I'm not.
Oh.
Well,
I'll introduce myself. Hi, I'm Giselle. I started my career out doing advertising and print work for a magazine, and then I moved to Austin and started designing native mobile apps at a bunch of different agencies. And from there, I worked at Retail Me Not, and I was in charge of their native mobile app. And I have been at Storable for the last 3 years on the in-house product team. I think is that it? That's all I should say.
I think that's it. We're excited to be here, very much so.
nice. Liz, are you available to give an intro?
I am. I, very similarly to Augie, got started in advertising. I was working in a mid-size agency up in the Chicago area, moved to Austin in 2017, and started working at a startup in the marketing department. Like many, decided that Austin tech scene was too hard to resist, so I took a General Assembly boot camp and transitioned into UX, and now I am a full stack designer working at IBM in their cloud computing unit. And yeah, excited to be here as well.
John, are you available to give a little intro?
Yeah, hi. John Reese. I am been in the business for about 25 years now. 10 years as a leader. So I built teams, the teams at General Motors, Home Depot, built and led teams there, and Dell. Worked at Amazon and PayPal. So been around, hired quite a few people. So I hope I could contribute a little bit to the conversation here tonight. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, John. And Teresa?
Hello, I'm Teresa. I got my start. I'm originally from Wisconsin, central Wisconsin, and started in traditional design, much of the graphic design and print. And then I worked at Foot Locker on a number of the kind of the brand websites underneath them. So footlocker.com and Lady Foot Locker, Kids Foot Locker, so on. And then I had an opportunity to move down here and work for what was then named Bankview, now Kasasa. And I have been there for almost 7 years and been managing for right around 3 years. So I manage a group of designers and copywriters, and we primarily work on the First Branch website product. And so we launch sites, and then we also support them as well. So we have 400 financial institution websites across the country that we've created their sites. And yeah, so been managing a little bit, and hopefully that can add to this conversation.
Great, thank you. Thank you for being with us tonight. Okay, so
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Amanda's going to start with the questions that we have pre-selected, and you can go ahead and start putting questions in the chat window, and I'll start asking those that you want me to ask, or just go ahead and ask if you want to do so. Okay?
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
I was thinking, all panelists, if I ask a question or if a question is asked and it's something you feel comfortable talking about, or if it's something you can speak to, I would just go ahead and jump in. So the first question we had was, what information besides case studies should we have on our portfolio?
Well, I think that a good about me section is helpful because a lot of times, especially in the beginning rounds of interviews, people are really looking for someone who's a good culture fit. Typically, if you've made it in for an interview, they already like your work. And so figuring out if you're a person that they want to talk to on a daily basis is a pretty high priority. And so any personality that you can infuse into your portfolio, I think is helpful.
I agree. I also think just like on top of the about me, just the overall like look and feel, and even like the way you explain things, maybe not in case studies, but the rest of your portfolio, like give it some character. Like you want to find ways to set yourself apart, not just be like, you know, this is Augie's profile. Like you said, just add some character, let them like enjoy what they're looking at outside of just seeing, you know, all the different projects you've done.
Yep, I totally agree. Paying attention to the details in your portfolio, like visually, what does it look like? How does the story flow? And I think this is part of the case studies, but storytelling is really, really important in UX. And so it's not just about the work that you did. It's about the story and the people that are using your products.
Yeah, totally. I second the about me section. As long as you're not just saying stuff that's just about you, and it somehow speaks to how good you are at a thing. Like if you love underwater basket weaving, like great. But if you like started the national like underwater basket weaving club that competes internationally, like that's the kind of thing I would want to see in like, you know, an about me section. Like don't just tell me about yourself. Tell me that you are like about yourself and that you're like excellent, something you're passionate about something.
And also, how does the basket weaving relate to design? I think that like what I'm looking for typically in an about me section is, you know, how did you get into design? What types of things are you passionate about in UX? Like why are you in the field? For some of you who might be like transitioning, how does the background that you have currently serve your transition into UX? Like I want to know about you as a designer.
Yeah, I think those are really great points. Does
We're
anyone
not all
else have anything
designers,
else to add?
Yeah, we're not all designers. Some of us are UX researchers and usability testers.
Yep.
Can any of you speak to what you want from that kind of a perspective, please?
I have worked with a lot of researchers and I have a small research background. And I think that from a research standpoint, it's understanding how you structured the studies, how you selected participants, what were the types of goals you were trying to achieve with the study, like what types of things were you trying to learn. And really with research, the storytelling still holds. You have to tell stories with your research, and more so than anything, at least for me, research is about selling through my ideas, backing up the designs and selling it through. And I find, at least at IBM, the silo between research and design is pretty low. We all consider ourselves designers and researchers, and we, I guess, try to at least be knowledgeable in each other's fields and push ourselves as much as we can.
Can I ask a follow-up question about the culture fit concept?
Yeah, of course.
So this is kind of an abstract thing, I think, to a lot of people. And over the last few years as we find ourselves creeping, thankfully creeping towards this age of inclusivity, right? Which is a wonderful thing. The connotation for a term like culture fit seems a little exclusive. And I think a lot of people, at least based on what I'm reading, are sort of happy to see this concept fade in some places. And I'm wondering how it's actually playing out in the places where you work, if it's playing out at all.
I think culture fit is more thought of in a different way in a business, is where it's just, you just want to sound excited about the job. Like, obviously you want to be able to get along with the people that are going to be on your team, be able to work with them well. So it's more just, you're not really going to understand the culture until you're there for a little bit. I mean, a lot of there's some places that preach that they have an amazing culture, and once you start to work there for a while, you realize it's not, what you expected. So I think it's more just showing that, you're open to conversation, open to working, like I said, excited about the job and the role. And just making yourself seem like you would be a good fit. Obviously, if you don't think you're going to be a good fit, maybe you're not, but just really seeing yourself fitting in with the team and how you're going to work with everybody.
So I would say on that one, at Kasasa, we really pride ourselves on the whole culture thing. And so, but kind of where we take it, and if you were to visit our site and do some research on us, when you come into an interview there, we would want to make sure that you've done your research on our company and you understand what, we have something called the patch values, and we would want you to know what those are and what those mean. And because it's those values, like Augie was saying, I do think there's a lot of companies you'll see where they say they have this big culture, and then you get into them. I've been in some where you're like, yeah, it's kind of, but for us, it's in every day, every award, every like performance review we do, is the top 4 values that we live by. And so it's very important that we can see that you've done your research before you got to an interview.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. One of the things I did notice too about the company I got hired at is like their whole website preaches how people first they are. Everyone has their different just like guidelines for what they follow. But yeah, really like the research is extremely important. There were multiple interviews where if I was able to tell them, like they asked me what I know about the company, if I was able to tell them, 3 or 4 like facts or just prove I've really done some research, they're definitely impressed by that. And that really sets you apart against other people, because there's some where, I've just heard stories where they call and the people just have no idea, or they don't even pronounce the company name right. So it's research really can make you stand out like early within the conversations that you're having.
I also think that, there's differences in different companies, and at least for the culture fit for me, it's really asking questions to figure out if you can hang with some of the challenges. And every company is going to have different challenges. So working at a startup is, you have to get down and dirty sometimes. You have to wear multiple hats. You have to move pretty quickly in a lot of ways, and, be comfortable kind of working on the fly, even in situations that you might not be familiar with. Working at IBM, which is a huge corporation, has totally different challenges. Nothing is ever done on the fly at IBM. You have to work through layers and layers of approvals. You have to work globally with people. And so it's just not about like who you are as a person. It's about, can you withstand some of the things that are challenging at this particular company?
I think I have 2 things. One to piggyback off is I also have been asked in an interview, out of all of our values, what's your favorite one? And I think for companies that do have a strong culture, in terms of like capital C culture, like in a company, that's great and that makes sense. But I think in terms of, I feel like your question has 2 sort of parts that you're combining that I'm not sure go together, and that is inclusivity and culture part of that. Like the whole inclusive nature and hiring for diversity, like that's great, and that's one thing. But the nature of a job search in general is exclusive. Like, you know, thousands of people are applying for a single position, and one of them gets the job. Like that is just, I mean, that is just exclusive, just because supply and demand, I guess, you know. So I do want to say, like, as a final, like, to bring it around, I know that lots of people here are trying to get their first job and go into a new field, and that can feel kind of desperate, and you just want the chance to break in. But hopefully you are viewing culture fit as going the opposite way too. I realize that this is way easier said than done, but if you're in an interview and you're not jiving with how people, like, I'm sure you can think of some examples of who I'm referring to, but if you're in an interview and you're not jiving with someone, like, that's a red flag for you, and you should be mindful of that. And I can think of some examples where I should have listened to myself more, instead of just being like, just give me the job, because I felt desperate to, like, you know, get a job or whatever the case is. So yeah. And that's the lowercase c culture, I guess I would say.
Yeah. No, that's a wonderful perspective. Thank you for sort of disentangling that a little bit.
Perfect. Any follow-up questions on culture, or we can go on to the next question? All right. Let's read the next question, Amanda.
Sure. Another big item was, how can I find a mentor, and how important is this?
I feel like attending events like this is usually pretty helpful. Maybe if you are hearing a panel and you feel like you can connect with someone, or you want to follow up with them afterwards and you liked what they were saying, just seeing if they're open to that type of relationship is helpful. Being in different meetup groups and Slack communities is helpful as well. You know, identifying people that seemingly are already contributing their time and are passionate about helping young designers. And lastly, really just asking people that you work with, if you already are in a company and you're transitioning and there's designers in that company, asking them. I found that if you really ask people, they're always happy to help, usually.
Yeah, I would think a mentor is very important. It's exponentially, you're going to go further in your career faster by having a mentor. And you can look internally to your company and externally to networking groups like this to find people who are in positions you want to be in, or, whether that be executive level all the way down to, just one level above where you're at. And just bouncing ideas off of someone, and, discussing with them, hey, I had a challenging conversation with a product owner the other day, and let me just go through it with you and get your feedback on how I could have handled that better or differently. Instead of doing that in a vacuum with yourself or people who haven't done that, you'll get a lot out of that. I highly recommend it.
I also just mentioned in the chat, but attending conferences is hugely helpful. I would say that, like, top 3 things that you can do to just make connections and meet people.
Should ask them for a coffee or a lunch, or just some time to sit aside during the day. It doesn't have to be anything overly formal.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, I'd second that. Like, I've had a handful of mentors, and I've never ever, like, asked, like, will you be my mentor? Like, I never, like, labeled it. Just, if you find someone who's willing to meet with you, have coffee with you, like, who's willing to, like, bounce ideas off of you or back at you, like, that's a mentorship. You don't have to put a stamp on it. You're gonna.
Right. I've had a mentor for the last 5 or 6 years, and I kind of clung to him at one of my jobs. He is super friendly, and he is so good at giving me, like, tough love as feedback, and I need that. And so I asked him one day, let's go get a beer after work. And for the last 5 or 6 years, we've been getting beers every month. And we've had such a great relationship. I worked at 3 places with him, and he got me 2 of my other jobs. So I just think it's extremely valuable to keep in touch with your coworkers that you do form relationships with, because it's easy to forget about them and move on. But Austin is a small town, even though it's a big city, and especially in the design community, everyone knows everybody. But don't be afraid to reach out to people that you work with, or even people that you meet today, to go get a drink or go get coffee, or whenever we are free again, have a Zoom beer together.
Speaking of.
But you have to work at it, and you both have to work at it.
That's great. Does anyone have any follow-up questions to ask about that, or want to add something?
Yes, I wanted to ask about that relationship between a mentor and whoever wants to have be mentored. Did you follow kind of structure? Like, was it only about portfolio reviews, or was it about what to do next, or how should I do this? Was it building soft skills or technical skills? What kind of things do you actually talk to with a mentor?
Let's say all of the above. Anything that you feel like you're struggling with in your career. A lot of mentees that I've had are, a lot of emotional intelligence. How could I have done this, handled this situation differently or better? It's not a lot of technical skill stuff. That's just regular stuff. So I would say it's a lot more about the soft skills, emotional intelligence. How do I get to the next level in my career? I mean, a good company will have those levels defined. A mature organization will say to get to that next level, you need to have these skills agreed upon with your management, but that's just a little part of it. It's actually a whole lot behind all of that you need to figure out with someone. And usually your mentor is not going to be your manager. I would recommend that you don't have your manager as your mentor. So if that helps. Yeah.
And feel free to have more than one mentor. Yeah. I mean, finding people that are good at specific things that you want to be good at is a great way to make sure that you're not like solely relying on one person sometimes to just help you through things.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think the more people you have in your network that you can lean on, I think that's great. And I think through time, you will have a network of a bunch of different designers that you can reach out to. In a sense, we're all like mentoring each other in a way, Great questions. We actually just got a really good question in the chat. So there seems to be a big movement in breaking down the concept of UX into specific areas such as interaction design, visual design, etc. With this happening, do you advise newcomers to be a UX generalist or really master one area in UX when applying for positions?
And that's going to be company to company is going to do that differently. A startup's going to want more unicorn roles. A larger company is going to want more specific roles. But what I've seen a lot of is we used to have I would hire information architects and visual designers and researchers, content strategists. And we still do, but we kind of grouped everybody in this product design role or even UX designer, but broke down those. I'm an information architect or I'm a visual design, and some people will be really great at visual design and not so great at architecture and vice versa, or research. And you need to learn to lean on your team for those other skills you're not so great at. A good team will have you with other designers that if you're really a great designer. Well, we had designers who were like, those are the guys you go to for icons, but they're still a product designer. They're the same as the guy who's really great at architecture. Same title, but we know they have specialities. We know they're good at certain things and okay at others. And those things that you're okay at are things we can help build. But nobody's going to be, very few people are going to be a golden unicorn that's just great at everything. And I don't think any good leader will have that expectation of you're great at everything. But I think, it also, like I said, depends on the company. At a startup, they may say, we want you to be a coder. We want you to be an architect, a researcher, a content strategist, and a designer. And that's just the way they're going to need that. But the larger companies aren't. So that's what I've seen.
Yeah, I definitely agree with John on that one. And I think if I kind of look into my background, I did a lot of things and tried to be a lot of different things. And I think in the beginning that got me in the door, right? And what I see even with my team is we've typically brought on a lot of younger designers who have tried different things, been different places, but once they start to find their strengths and get into their groove, yeah, like as a manager, I'll give this project to this person because they have those strengths, or give a different project over to someone else because that's where their strengths are. So I think as you mature and you grow in your career, you might find your special spot, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, but not being a unicorn.
I don't think I've really seen that trend in the industry of the industry specifically trying to break down the UX designer role into like more specific things. I think that exists. I think it's existing more, but only, to John's point, only at bigger companies that can afford to have sort of specialists. Giselle is at our company the only designer, only full-time designer. We have one contractor, and I mean, you do like everything. You do whatever's needed, and we are. I don't know if it gets in the public. We're about a $40 million like division of a company. So that's like pretty big, but I'm a proponent of saying like wherever you are, if it's a company that's large enough to have like multiple designers, you can kind of make what you want. I mean, you have to do what's necessary. You have to do what's needed. But like if you want to like do more research or do more testing or do more interaction design, what I think you can kind of like make the role what you want as long as you get your main thing done. Yeah.
Any follow-up questions on that, guys? All right. So I think this one's pretty important. How can I be sure that my resume is ATS or applicant tracking system friendly? Do you guys have any pointers?
I use a site called jobscan.co. There's a lot of different systems that scan a lot of different ways, and every company has a different system, or most companies have a different system. So it will actually scan your resume. It will scan the job posting. You tell it where that job posting is posted, what company, and it will go and find out what kind of system they have and how it's going to be interpreted for that company. There's a free trial for like a month or something, or a few weeks, whatever it is. And then it gets a little pricey, but I'm sure you could find ways around that if you need to. But yeah, it is a real struggle. It's a real challenge now to wonder, when you send a resume to a company, you likely don't know how it's going to be interpreted. You may just get an automatic instant denial, and no one's even seen it, just because some system decided you didn't hit the right keywords in the right place. So if you can use a tool like that, what I did is when I was looking for a job is I ran it through for multiple jobs. I ran it through one job and it said, here are the things you would change. And then I ran it through another job and it said, change these few other things. And then after I did it a few times, my resume looked a little robotic or bloated, but it stopped saying you need to change anything. And I went, okay, I'm going to clean it up just a bit from there because I had the right keywords at that point. But it is a new world for that. You don't, even with referrals, you may not get a call back anymore because some computer will decide they didn't like you. So
try and work around that as much as possible. Like try and find someone on LinkedIn who works at the company who can maybe push your stuff along further. Any connection you have to send your resume off to a real human is helpful.
That's the real answer right there. Is LinkedIn networking should be your full-time job.
Yeah, friending strangers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great feedback. I have to agree with all of that. you definitely need to utilize your network as much as you can, because that helps a ton. All right. I love this question. So what would you guys have done differently when you were in the beginning of your like journey as becoming whatever role you're doing now?
I think I would have definitely started networking even like while still in the boot camp. Like my whole thing was like, I need to have business cards. I need to have a portfolio I could show people. Like I can't go there before I'm ready. And once I finally got into just starting to go to some events, it's like, you really don't need all that. You simply just tell people, you know, you're early in to what you're doing, and just kind of helps you get the foot in the door. And you got to remember, like, people are really friendly. Like, you know, a couple people that I met and they offered to, you know, give me tours of their office or just kind of talk to me about different things. Like, you never know how helpful people could be till you get yourself out there. So yeah, I kind of waited, made sure my portfolio was done, then started applying to jobs, and then finally started going to some meetups. And like I said, right away, it was really good, quick feedback. So I'd say just get onto the networking stuff as soon as you can. Even if you don't have materials to show people, it's still just nice meeting people and getting to know them.
Yeah, you should network starting in high school, probably. You probably have a LinkedIn account in high school from now. That's for sure. I think emotional intelligence was a big problem for me early on. Designers are very passionate individuals, and we need to learn to those real strong emotional intelligence skills of how to read the room, how to determine what the motivation of the person sitting across from you is. There's a lot of great books on that. I recommend Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I got the book, never found time to read it, and then I got the audiobook and listened to it on the way to work. Back in the day when we used to go to work. It changed my view of the world, and it was really just enlightening to me. We made that mandatory in training in a lot of companies I worked at now. Learning business skills like KPIs and OKRs and business terminology and business motivation is very important. It makes you look smart. It makes you, you're not just the guy making the designs anymore. You're the guy playing a role in the business decisions because you understand the impact to the company and you speak that language. Those were two big things that really took me too long to evolve to. And I wish I would have done that earlier, is really focused on some emotional intelligence and business metrics.
I think also just not getting inside your own head and defining yourself by the fact that you're maybe new or breaking into something that's unfamiliar. It's going to be uncomfortable at times because, you know, you kind of don't know what you're doing, but I've been a designer for 7 years now, and I can tell you there's still stuff that happens where I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. So just know that just because people are seasoned designers doesn't mean that they don't also have those struggles too. And that's never going to stop because we're designers. We just are always comparing ourselves and looking for ways to improve, but be confident in yourselves and know that, you know, if you've taken the initiative to even come to this meetup, to start this career change and to, you know, put together a portfolio and start that journey, you're already doing a lot of things really right. And so be encouraged by the fact that you're probably better than you think you are.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a good segue into imposter syndrome. How have you guys overcame that in the past? Or do you still battle it?
I have a good one for this. I have always struggled with imposter syndrome. And one thing that I've done is actually to write out a list of like design commandments on what I personally think a good designer is and what I would like to achieve. And I think just by kind of listing out, I think I should do this, this, and this type of thing, it makes it a little more tangible so that you're not just like comparing yourself to people and seeing, oh, this person does this really well and I can't do that, or they do this really well and I've never tried that. I think it's like if you can define for yourself what your goals are and what you think that you want to be as a designer, then it gives you something more concrete to work towards. And you can put actionable items behind it. You know, you want to become a good visual designer. Well, what does that mean? so you can do good illustrations. Well, that become a lot more real. Like, what do you need to do to become a good illustrator? Well, I need to take a class on illustration. I need to learn Illustrator. I need to start practicing with shapes and learning how to create depth and things like that. You know, it breaks it down a little more easy for you so that you can work towards things. And then, you know, once you achieve all of the things on your list, you can make another list and start working towards a new set of goals. So that for me has been really helpful.
Yeah, I second the whole, like, that never goes away, or at least it hasn't for me until I reach
I'll fourth that one. Yeah.
I am, so this will like kind of go back to the last question too. Like, my goal now is like wisdom. I'm like striving for Gandalf status. That's all. Like, I want to skip my middle years and just go straight into like old gray, long beard, huge nose, and like pointy hat. So like, this is kind of the answer I have for like both of them. There are a couple of things I would have done earlier in my career and that also have helped me kind of combat imposter syndrome. And one is start reading earlier. I didn't start reading like professional career books until really late in my career. And when I did, my career trajectory just like took off. And secondly, to Liz's point, that has helped me to create, I don't know what a manifesto of like little, like, it's a note that I have in Evernote of just like, I think the title of the note is like screensaver desktop background wisdom, for like little like like things that I just like, I noted, I believe now are true and like are words to act by. And I'm putting a thing in the Slack, or not Slack, whatever, Zoom chat. So much technology. Or for this Chrome extension, Uber design, the design group at Uber put together this book that you cannot buy anywhere called 77 Things. And it's exactly that. It's like the like phrases that they live by. And this is a Chrome extension that anytime you open up a new tab, it gives you one of their 77 things. And if you mouse over it, like gives you a little explanation of like, you know, it's like their, I guess, 77 commandments. And I just downloaded it because I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I'm realizing now as I'm sharing my screen at meetings at work, people are like, whoa, what was that? And like, it started discussions, and it's actually like become kind of cool. And it's helped me to like also like stay kind of more truer to being an honest designer or an honest like employee. And yeah, so.
That's an awesome extension.
Yeah. I think another thing about creating something like a manifesto or a list of things that you want to be is editing it, right? I did not allow myself to go over 10 things. And what I did was actually, I looked back in my career and I thought about who are all the people that I work with that I admire? Like, why did I admire them? Like, what did I like about working with Brett? Or what did I like about working with Mike? I think listing out those things and then keeping it at a specific number and then saying no to a lot of other things. Like, I think just focusing on some stuff allows you to deflect other things so that you can stay focused on what you're trying to achieve and not get distracted by other things. Like, it's okay to put some goals that you have on the back burner.
So I'm sharing, I just made a public link for this Evernote, so you guys can make fun of my ridiculous, this is so not edited. It's Alex Bose's screensaver desktop, hold on. This is ridiculous. Screensaver desktop background life lesson, wisdom, knowledge. So I hope you read these and save time from all the books I've read.
Yeah, that was actually another question, is what are some of your favorite career books that you feel like helped you get ahead? I see Teresa looking over like maybe at her bookcase.
I'm looking at like, I mean, I think a big one for me was Ego is the Enemy.
Oh, I'm reading that right now.
Yeah, that one I've reread multiple times. And I think I feel like we're going to start to overlap a little bit, but anything off from like social or the soft skills and emotional intelligence, anything along those lines, I think will take many of you pretty far in your career and just kind of open you up to like, oh my goodness, yeah, these are things I need to work on.
Grit by Angela Duckworth is really great. And it's all about the idea of stick-to-itiveness and
Second that.
science behind working towards something. And even when it sucks, like just keeping on. And that is a huge part of UX, is like just working through things, walking in mud continually.
Yeah, those are some great recommendations. And then Alex, I'm sorry I missed it, but did you say you shared an Evernote list of other books you found useful in Slack?
I can't, that was my list of like notes that I've taken from books. I have a book, I have this super anal way of prioritizing my book list of books I need to read. And I can share that. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't think it's going to work. But anytime I hear someone mention a book whose opinion I respect, that book gets another tally mark. So I have this naturally prioritized list of like 400 books. And I take crazy notes on all of them, and they all have tags of who recommended it. It's insane. I have OCD, I swear. So I'm like trying to go through these. I think some of the best ones, Lean Startup by Eric Ries, especially if you're going into the tech world, is really great. Design of Everyday Things and Don't Make Me Think. Ruined by Design is a great book on ethics in design. I honestly, I hate the title of this book, but ultimately I think it's like, it's more about how to best your time on this planet. The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, which I know is controversial, but it's still good. Creativity Inc. by Pixar. Hooked by Nir Eyal is excellent. That book, I've brought that book up in meetings and talking about how we're like missing a portion of whatever we're designing. Sprint by Jake Knapp. And then I think separately, once you kind of start mastering the fundamentals of design, understanding sort of the evolution of human biology, I think has really helped me as a designer and to understand how humans interact with interfaces. So I'd say Sapiens, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that guy's name, but it's like a really popular book you find if you Google Sapiens, and Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I think those are probably the two best books that like elevated me to another plane of thinking. Okay, I'm done now. Sorry, that was a lot.
Wow, thank you for all those. I was trying to write them real fast. Any follow-up questions on that, or any recommendations that have helped you in UX specifically?
I might add something if it's all right. If anyone does like independent consulting or freelance work, one that really helped me was the Win Without Pitching Manifesto by Blair Enns. It's more on like pricing your work and realizing its value. It's less about design, so it can really apply to any kind of creative work. But I thought I'd put that out there.
Mm-hmm. Which kind of brings us to one of the questions that we have in the chat. What do you recommend for people who are trying to do freelance work or consulting, especially now that we are in the lockdown that we're in? How do people start their career as a freelancer in UX?
I would say kind of similar to what we were saying on how to get a job, get out there and network. So right now, a lot of that's going to be virtual networking, but I did my own freelance thing for about 5 years, and all of it was, you know, people that I had met or networked with, and then it was referrals from those people that, you know, really enjoyed working with me and passed my name along. So meeting people and getting out there.
And letting your whole network know, you know, even on Facebook or whatever, Twitter, whatever you're on, just letting people know that you're looking for work. And I feel like a lot of people try to reach out with connections and stuff. Be wary of family. That's not always the best, but just telling people that you're looking for those types of opportunities is helpful.
I think networking and having a strong portfolio are two things to really get you started, no matter what you're going to do. If you could network all you want, if you don't have a great portfolio to send someone, once you found someone who's looking for someone, it's not going to go very far. I've actually seen that happen. I've met people at vision meetups, and they're like, yeah, I'm looking great, we're hiring. And he's like, I got to get my portfolio together. And I'm like, great, never heard back from him. Make sure your portfolio is quality, even if it's just 2 or 3 things. It tells a good story. That storytelling is important. So you have to kind of say X percentage is networking, X percentage is working on your portfolio, because if you don't have something great to send someone when you've met them, then it doesn't really work either way.
And with freelance, it's a lot of business too, negotiating rates, following up with clients, and making sure that, timelines are right, you're getting paid. There's a lot of things that go into like running the project.
So on that note, sorry, I had to mute myself. So if someone else recommended this book, I apologize. Design is a Job by Mike Monteiro is a great read. And I think a lot of what he talks about applies to starting out as a freelancer. And he covers a lot of things in his book, imposter syndrome and how to make sure you get paid. And it's a great read, and I highly recommend it. And I'll Slack it out to you guys, or Zoom it out. So many different tech platforms.
He also has a good video out there too to watch. It's about an hour long, and I would recommend that as well. So just looking up Mike in general.
Chris Do is another really good designer who has a lot of classes and free YouTube content actually. But he is really all about the business of design and how to really sell yourself, how to get the most out of your work, and really value yourself. And he covers that business side of freelancing. So if that's something that any of you guys really want to get into, I would totally recommend checking him out.
All right.
Okay, so let's
sorry for the awkward
we
silence.
talked about a little bit.
on
You
it.
mentioned a strong portfolio. Are there parts of a case study that you think should be in a portfolio, regardless of what field are you specializing on? For those that are UX researchers versus UI designers and just generalists.
The inventory of that storytelling will be different depending on your role. I mean, I don't think anyone expects the researcher to go do design, but the understanding the goal of the project, the business needs of the project, the customer needs, the friction, the why we're doing this, understanding who the customer is, that's all, common work. You can also show a lot of things about collaboration, how I worked with my teams, how I worked with my business partners, how I worked with my developers, no matter what your role is. So sharing information as a researcher is important, as a content strategist, getting those things made. If you're a content strategist, so you want to go out and say, hey, we made a guide for our teams to know, and we shared that with the business teams and engineering teams. Same for research. You want to be sure to publish and collaborate and share that information. But if you're, putting your portfolio together, each project will be different. There's no set inventory. Every project has to have the same thing. But it is important for you to not show just mock-ups. I can't tell you how many portfolios I've just closed out and sent right back because they just had mock-ups. They have to tell a story, and they have to say, this is why we did it. This is what I found. This is, the information, the science behind the art, the testing we did, the results of those testing. Therefore, we did this. The final design is the least important part of that to me when I'm hiring. So I can't think of anyone, unless you're just going out for visual design, you want to work on a marketing team or something along those lines. And that's not derogatory. That's just a certain role does that. Then the final design is not as important as the how and why of what you're doing. So.
Yeah, just echoing a little bit of what you just said, John, showing that iteration and like how you were able to pivot based on feedback and learning is really huge.
Yeah.
And I think too, starting out with a problem, and you want to factor in business needs, but for me personally, it's always about the users. Like, what problems are the users facing and how are you going to solve them? And then at the end of the story, bringing that full circle and talking about the impact that you made, and like how did you change the problem? What were the results of that effort that you made? And not just like saying what you learned, but the tangible results. I think any quantitative data you can put in is helpful. And this applies for research too. It's like, when I've done research, mostly the results are whether or not I was able to change my stakeholders' minds about how much design was needed or what type of direction we should go in. And so you can still apply those types of things to, even research.
Yeah, definitely to echo that, even like I had a mentor tell me, just getting ready to present the portfolio into different interviews, like you really have to show like that this was the problem and this is how you solved it. Because obviously that's really what UX is, getting down to it. So obviously your portfolio is telling that story and really reach any information that you have that you had your hand in, you want to show. And then if there's things that maybe other people in your group or other researchers or UI, whatever it is, if they handled, you can still mention that. Just make sure the credit's given to them if it's going to help tell your story. And then going on and then showing, like Liz had mentioned, here's the testing we did, here's the updates we made, and this is the effect it had. So it's, again, just telling that short story and really showing your work of how you're fixing these problems through design and through research.
Yeah, I really like what John said, that every project is different. Something that I say to my students all the time, and this is true for designers, but especially true for researchers, is that you are stewards of your own process. And if you take a boot camp, most of them are taught like, this is the step-by-step process that you start a design project and you do all these things and you get to the end. But really, those things that you are learning are just tools in a toolbox that you should pull out when you think they best apply. And so listing out the tools and the processes that you used, but even above it, I think is important, but even above that is the outcome. I think what Liz and what everybody kind of mirrored here is like, what were the results of what you did? If you just talk about like what you did, that tells me that you did a job. But I think even more important is that you did a job. So the results are your evidence to show that.
Yeah, and what were the obstacles or challenges that you had to hop over to get there as well? Being able to communicate those and how you did that.
Okay, in that same area, I also wanted to ask something about process. That's something I keep hearing, that you need to show process in your case studies and show your own process. How important is that? And do you consider that something that you look at and say, oh, I don't like this process, or do you have like a template of what a process should look like?
Yeah, process is very important. Teams that don't use process are chaotic and don't accomplish near as much as a team with process. Every team and every company can have its own process. I'll give you an example of one we used is guaranteed kickoff. Everything has to have a kickoff, all stakeholders involved. It can be 30 minutes to an hour and a half, somewhere in that ballpark, but we're all going to sit down and we're all going to talk about the goal of the project, what we're trying to accomplish, maybe even draw some things on the whiteboard. As a team with no expectations of that being designed by committee or anything, but we're going to have a good solid understanding before we go back and start working on it. Then it's going to go into some short design phase. A peer review is mandatory. That way you're collaborating with your team, you're on pattern. Everybody understands what you're designing and they get their eyes on it. So that it's not too weird or different or off the ball, or maybe it's really great and it's inspiring someone else to work on their project a different way. Then it goes into some user testing, goes into some management review. That's just a high level process. Every team can do it differently. There may be some other reviews, some other testing iterations in there, but if you don't have a process, I've seen organizations that have no process at all, and they're just anarchy and chaos. And I'm huge on process, and like I said, it can vary group to group.
Yeah, I think I echo that too. It really is like, even if you are like like me, I just was coming out of a boot camp, so you really just have kind of projects that you had from the boot camp and not real life experience, but it's still just showing how each project went and going through that process. Because even though you might not have real life UX experience, like these companies just want to see how you think. You know, the projects you did may have nothing to do with the company you're applying for, but if they can tell how you think and how you solve problems, that's kind of how they relate that to, can you do the job well? So it really is just showing what your thought process and how you came to the solutions you did, how you solved those problems. And the best way to do that is just by showing all of that through each of your projects. So.
Any questions about that from anyone?
I was muted. I actually have another follow-up question. So based on what you just said, Augie, if someone only has experience from a boot camp and they don't have like results really, they just are showing their process, like how do you think that affects getting hired if you're looking for your first job? Does that matter?
Go get results.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yes, 100%. Like take it to the next level.
What I've told many people is, if you want to just get started in this, I've hired plenty of people who've gone to no school or boot camps. What got me interested in them was a good portfolio, and they've gone to local businesses who down the street, some Chinese restaurant, and they've designed a digital space for them, made a native app and improved website that, and used that as a case study, and did the best they could on some kind of local businesses, and they made some great examples of how they would work and what their work quality would look like. And in no way did they get paid for that. And they're welcome to go show that business and say, hey, if you wanted to make some of this, I could help you. But you can go out and don't try to reinvent, Best Buy or Walmart or something like that. Try to reinvent some local business that does a terrible presence. Here's the before and after. Here's the work I did. And you have to build that work. So even if you just come out of a boot camp or something and you're done no school at all, you can build those portfolio pieces.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, especially if it's a specific industry, like maybe it's e-com or something that you want to work in, go and redesign something that you haven't been asked to redesign, or just see an order process that you find a problem in and fix it and throw that in your portfolio. And also too, I think what's important and message you kind of want to relay through your resume, portfolio, and then especially in interviews is just, how does your background relate to UX? Every job, whether you have a design background or not, every job, your story can relate to UX in some way. So it's, maybe I've never worked in a UX job before, but in previous roles, this is how I related to it. So being able to tell that story too is going to be able for them to understand, things in a job can be learned. It's all about you and how you solve problems and what your story is for how you're going to contribute to the team. So definitely just figure out what your story is and what your background relates to UX, and make sure you practice on telling that story over and over, because then you're going to convince people, like, I might not have the experience yet in UX, but I'm set for this job based on my portfolio and background that I have.
And hang out at coffee shops. That is the best way to get people's feedback on stuff. I think someone else mentioned just buying people coffee for things. Well, it works for doing user testing too.
Yeah, at PayPal, that's exactly how I did all of our user testing. For all the informal user testing, we went down to Starbucks at the Domain and sat outside, and I wouldn't probably do that today, but back in the day, that's what we did. And I set up a little sign. I said, gift cards for feedback. And people would just go, what are you scamming here? And I don't know, I just want you to look at my designs. And then after a while, there's a line of people trying to give me feedback on designs. And that's how we did all of our informal feedback. And we brought people in for formal in-house feedback, but it was like we wanted more iterative, quicker feedback. So I'd go down to Starbucks. It's great.
I love that so much. That warms my heart.
And don't feel like you have to show them finished designs either. Like, bust out the pencil and sketch some stuff and do a paper prototype. That's the fastest way to get answers. And you don't have to design and waste a bunch of time before you learn things that you shouldn't be doing or should be doing.
Just to, if anybody's looking for like a blueprint for like results, it's really easy to just make sure you have like a control and a variable in your like give a time to target test, like give them a task, time it, get the average, and then show them your new designs and do the same thing. And then your result is it was here and now it's here and you're done.
Thank you. Excellent. I have a question here from Chelsea. She says, what is the biggest misconception in the user experience design industry?
I don't know. What are you guys assuming about the industry?
I guess from the hiring managers, if I interpret that correctly. I mean, Chelsea, you are welcome to speak up and elaborate on your question. This is Chelsea Cunningham.
Hey.
There you are.
So I think it was just more just trying to get into what do you think people think about the industry that they might have incorrect or assume about the industry, I guess, that's not true?
I think there's still a large portion of companies out there that still think we make mock-ups for the IT guys. I've found many of those, and it's important to kind of challenge them on how they do UX and what their UX team does for them and what their expectations are. Where are they in the org chart for your company? And and if it's, hey, I want faster mock-ups, and you're in the IT group, and little red flags should start going up. I think that's still a real thing. There are a lot of organizations who want real UX now and understand it and know how to mature it, but there are a lot that don't.
I think another, I don't know if it's a misconception necessarily, but something that maybe a lot of UXers don't realize when they're getting into the field is just how much not UX design you're actually doing. Like, I spend a ton of time wrangling people and just following up with them and trying to get them to give me the things that I need, or get my product manager to sit down with me and plan a roadmap when he's got 1,000,001 other things to do. Just strategizing and selling your designs through. Like I said, research is a huge part of getting alignment and just figuring out how to talk to people, putting together decks to sell your ideas through. Just a lot of things that are not what you would traditionally think that you'd be doing as a UX designer.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you, guys.
I think John's answer is probably the most. Your question was misconceptions in the industry. So I'm trying to think of, like, in sort of a broader sense of like the tech industry, what are the misconceptions about the role? I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but I totally agree with John in that, like, most people still consider UX designers to be pixel pushers. And I think that's a huge problem. And I hate that that's a thing when there are brilliant UX designers and product designers and all kinds of designers who have brains who can solve problems first. And then they make the designs to solve those problems. So I think that's my answer to the biggest misconception in the industry.
So another question I just got was, why are all of these entry-level roles asking for 3 to 5 years of experience? And how do you work around that?
It is like I said, just telling your story, and if you have experience elsewhere in a different job, kind of spin that. If not, even if you are just in schooling, I mean, I think as long as your resume, like your portfolio, is going to speak for yourself. I mean, it might be hard to get them to look at those things. I mean, there's some jobs where they're just putting that there as a standard, but they're still going to look through your portfolio and your resume. And then there's somewhere, maybe it does become a little bit limiting, but I think it is really just telling your story and showing how you don't need those 3 years, or you had 3 years in a different industry and here's how it relates.
Yeah, ignore that. Most of them were written by recruiters who don't know what they're doing, or they consulted some manager who was way too busy to go into the fine details of those things. We've rewritten all of the job descriptions just in the last year or so at Dell, at Home Depot, I'm sure many others have. And it's just because we went, wait, we're asking for how many years on what? And too many, too few, whatever it may be. If it's an entry-level job, if it's a job you think you can do, apply. The worst they'll say is no, but it's yeah, I don't know what else to say, but ignore that.
I think another part of that too, what we were
Go
talking
ahead.
about, those soft skills, like knowing, like 3 to 5 years of experience is knowing that someone's not going to get upset if their design doesn't get chosen right away, or that they're going to be able to handle it when the stakeholders don't do what they want, or that things didn't go in the direction that they had hoped for. Just being able to navigate the challenges of not being like totally green. And so if you can sell your soft skills in that way and prove that you can handle situations, I think that's a big part of wanting that experience, is not really relating to design necessarily, but also knowing that you can navigate things.
And I too like John was mentioning that if it's a company that you're interested in, or if it's a role you're really interested in, but there's a couple of different like bullet points on the job description that turn you off, or that you think you're absolutely not qualified for. Again, those aren't always written by the managers hiring that person. So don't let those kind of details deter you from applying to a job that you definitely think you're qualified for, if it's a company you want to be at, or if you're just, out of boot camp and open to, a lot of different variety of jobs, and apply to all of them, because you're not really going to understand what the day-to-day job looks like until you get in and talk to that hiring manager and see the things you'll be working on. So don't let just a job description kind of deter you from what you really think the job's going to be.
Yeah, I fucking hate this so much. It bugs the crap out of me. Like that, if you think about it, like we want to pay you for an entry level role, but we want you to have more experience than that. We want this level person, but we want to pay you at this level. I mean, like, no, it's not okay. So like, forget that shit. Just go apply for it. Actually in this current role, I just recently moved up to a senior level position. And I didn't have a senior role. I was only applying to senior roles just to see if it worked, and it totally worked. So if you are looking for that role and you think like I don't fulfill all the check boxes, like just fucking do it. Like send it. It's all good. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing that that's happened to me a lot is I get a set hiring profile for the year, and it's hire this many senior, junior, mid-level leads, whatever, managers. And some of that's not even set by me. Well, actually, I kind of recommend something that comes back to me and says, you can hire this much. And then, I think it was Jennifer Sharp mentioned earlier, it's like, well, everything looks like it's seniors and many years of experience. When it comes down to, what I'm hiring for a year, it's, you can't hire everyone at a senior level. Then you'll have this huge group of people that are up here at senior level, and they'll all want to go to lead in the next year or two. And then you'll have this congestion of you have one opening for a lead. So you have to, as a smart group, hire at different levels so that you can say, we're going to promote internally, these entry level into mid-level into senior level into lead level, and on and on. If any company is hiring only, maybe they lost all their senior designers and they're only hiring senior designers or something like that. Or maybe they've got that situation where they only hired senior designers and all of them are leaving because they only opened one lead role in over 3 years. And so nobody can get a promotion internally. So that's a situation. But, when you are doing that LinkedIn networking, find those hiring managers, find the recruiters, and make sure they know, hey, I'm at this level, my salary's at this level. And don't undersell yourself. They'll always bring it down a little if they need to. But tell them, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and I'm available, and I'm I'd love to work for you. I love your products, your company, etc. And or especially you can get to the hiring manager, and then they go, oh, I got an opening all of a sudden. We fired up a new project, and I need your level of this maybe one entry and one senior, and it's not really up to the manager all the time. They get a budget and they say, you can have this much money, and with this much money, you can hire one person, or you can hire, these 2 or 3 people. So a lot of times you're like, hey, I saw some really sharp people who are some college hires have been my best hires. That's kind of how it works. But it's not always just, hey, I only want senior people. I absolutely don't always want senior people, because I've seen that, and it's troubling as a leader to say, I can only promote one of you in the next 3 years. And that's not up to me. I don't get to choose how many lead roles I'm going to open. It's a budget that some executive team sends down. So, if that helps.
That too, not like to be the dead horse, but the networking aspect. I mean, yeah, you can get lucky and maybe find something on a job board, but also if you're networking and talking to these people, then you're meeting the right people to get that job. They're not worried about the experience you've had, because you've started those conversations and they're getting to know who you are before they even see your resume. So obviously, we've mentioned how important that is, but that's kind of another way around just applying online and showing your experience in a resume, is just meeting the people at the places you want to work.
Yeah, and what John was kind of describing too, in my experience, very same thing. Like, it's very realistic of the HR person, put up the job description and it said senior, but I had already been thinking that, hey, I'm going to promote so-and-so to a senior level position. And so maybe I get 2 seniors that applied for it and then some junior people. And I'm like, okay, that, I'm going to make these shifts within my team, and I'm going to bring in this person who doesn't have any experience. But I can do, I think spot on what John says, like, we have the budget and we kind of shift around our team the way we need it to be. And we're not always in line with HR, or HR is a step ahead of us from where we were. Or maybe they sent that out like 2 weeks ago and we made decisions, we just had conversations amongst us like last week. And so timing of all of that can really shift, or other things can change. The budget might have changed in that time as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really true. I've gotten lead openings or senior openings, and instead of hiring, I've moved someone internally up a level, and then we just backfilled them. And that would have been, if you were an entry level and we got a mid-level opening, I could have put one of my entry levels in. Just because you didn't apply to it, I didn't have your resume sitting around. I'll often go, just show me the resumes we got for that opening. I'm going to look through them and see if anybody qualifies. It's a lot of trouble to post a new one, wait for them to come in, wait for them to be filtered. And you can say, oh, I've got a stack over here from that posting. Let me just check some of them real quick. So that's a good point.
On that same note about senior positions, what do you really consider a senior position? Is it only based on the years of experience, or also on the work that they can put out? Because I've seen people who have only 3-5 years of experience and do much better work than someone who's been doing it for 10 years. So I was wondering, how do you, what do you consider a senior position?
Not years. We're not going to hire someone straight out of college in a senior role. But what it is it's a lot of things, and it's not just the work either. It's also how their business acumen, their soft skills, their collaboration with their team members, the maturity level, I guess you can get down to it, is really important. A senior role I'm going to put in front of an executive team sometimes. I'm going to say, go sell your project. Go tell them what we're doing and why we're doing it. And you have to be at a certain level where you're going to say, yeah, I can throw together a great deck. I can present the work articulately. I can help them understand what we're trying to do, and I can defend the design choices we've made. But that's not always about, I've been a designer for 5 years, 6 years. That's not, that's a part of it. It's not at all the main thing. It's a certain maturity level that emotional intelligence, business acumen, design skills, etc.
That's great. And I feel like that kind of ties in with the question earlier about how, just because a job post says 3 to 5 years, I mean, that's just like the perfect candidate, or that's just like just something they put on there. But I mean, I feel like if you're selling your work and selling yourself, then you're going to be you know, a good candidate for that role. So I've been getting a lot of pings about how COVID-19 is affecting the tech industry, and how can these job searchers navigate the job market during this time? I know that's kind of a tough one. I think we're all kind of figuring that out.
I think it comes back to the networking. It's LinkedIn, getting online, selling yourself, working, using this time. You may have some extra time to build that portfolio. Get some LinkedIn Premium. I highly recommend it. I've gotten at least 6 jobs off LinkedIn Premium just because I can reach out to recruiters. I can reach out to hiring managers. It may cost $30 a month or something, but just buy it for a month or 2. I know that's not everybody has, you know, that money you're sitting around, but it's worth it. If you want to get a job, it's worked for me.
I think also like that downtime to do maybe more design work. I mean, there are so many UX problems happening right now in COVID, and just picking one of them, like how might we help parents with kids that now need to homeschool them? How might we improve the unemployment system? How might I solve a problem with supply chain? And like putting together a whole project around it, I think that shows a lot of grit and tenacity. It's a great way to display your thinking in a situation that's relevant to everybody. And so really, even if you're experiencing some dry spell and not hearing from, you know, job posters, just take the time to continue to do your thing, your UX work, and build a better book.
Write Medium articles, LinkedIn articles, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been, I totally mirror John's point of like being productive during this time, because I can certainly, I didn't hear anybody say it, but like, I know that we are, and most companies are, on a hiring freeze just because the future is uncertain. So staying productive in like finding that local business that needs a new website, and like finding that like next like side project to go, you know, help build your portfolio, or taking some kind of Udemy course, or I've been suggesting to my students get a certification like CSPO, which is Certified Scrum Product Owner, which I know is not about design, but is certainly the types of people who you will be working with as a designer in the tech world. And all things being equal, you know, having that certification or some other similar kind of thing versus not is going to be like, could be a deciding factor. And I guarantee you not a lot of designers have some kind of agile certification. So I don't know if that's, I don't know if any of the other panelists agree or disagree, but certainly at least being productive with the time that you have here now.
You never know where things are going to take you. I'm about to take a data science course so that I can build AI into a product that I'm working on. And data science is not something that I ever thought that I would have to really learn, like down and dirty, but you know, you never know what types of things you're going to be doing. And so soak it all up while you have the time.
Yeah, I think learning agile or learning different facets of the business or whatever you might be touching is extremely valuable. As a younger designer, I learned, like, I took development classes and copywriting classes and just various different things that I didn't want to be my specialty, but I knew that I'd be working with those people and I needed to have a basic understanding of what they did, how they did it, because I needed to talk their language to get projects done and accomplish things. So I'm with you on that, Alex.
All right. Going back a little bit, someone mentioned that spinning your other experience is also important when applying to jobs and kind of showing that you have experience, or to match up those 3 to 5 years of experience they asked you to have. Could you or should you add that to your portfolio? Like let's say you have a background in graphic design or logo design, should you add that to your portfolio as another section or steer away from that?
I'm somewhat new, like to the industry. I haven't, been in a while or hired other UXers, so I definitely can't speak for everybody. But just going through my experience and talking to the teachers I had, because I've got a graphic design background, I was always told to keep that separate because hiring, even though it's design experience, it's in a different kind of industry. And I think from what I've heard is that people that are looking to hire want to see you specializing in something, not, I do some of this design, I do this and that. So it's really, when you're talking to somebody, definitely spin that story, or, obviously your jobs are listed on your resume, make sure those bullets are talking to how what you did relates to UX and solving problems. But I mean, like I said, I think everyone might have their own opinion, but I was always told just keep that separate and show like you are solely focused on UX. And two, you don't want to give them a ton of projects to click through anyways. My portfolio had 2 projects on it. So it's really, you don't need to give them a ton, and you don't need to waste their time with something that isn't going to be related to the things that you're going to be doing. So if there's maybe a really good way to spin a story in graphic design you've done, then include it. But I've always been kind of told to just focus on the UX and how that experience relates to the job.
I would say if it's relevant, include it. We've hired people who are great in UX just because they also included things like, I'm a great vector designer, and we needed someone on the team that did vector design. If it was, hey, I made sandwiches, I don't care about that. Don't include that, honestly. Kick it off if it's something totally unrelated. It'll just take up space. And but if it's in any way related to the field, I would include it.
I think that there are 2 things that I tell all my students trying to break into UX design. One is, how are you continuing to learn outside of the class material? And the second is, how are you applying what you've learned outside of the class? If you only take a boot camp and you just do the stuff that's in the course, it's just academic, and no one outside of that sort of bubble is recognizing the value of the lessons that you've learned. So spin is a little bit of I don't know if I'd go for like spin, but if there's any way that you can apply your skills as a designer or a researcher or whatever in any way, like we were saying earlier, in doing some side project for a local business or in your current role, and then highlighting that as a case study, that shows a hiring manager that not only are you able to learn these things, but you're able to apply them in a setting where someone else outside of the academic bubble recognizes the value of the lessons you learn. And that is, I think, the best thing you can do coming out of a boot camp, or just in general, trying to break into an industry, showing that you can do the same kind of work.
I'm not a hard yes or no on this, but I think one thing to really think about is, if you're including it in your portfolio, then you show some kind of interest in potentially doing that type of project as well. So like kind of what John was saying, where, he needed a vector designer. If you hate doing vector designers, do not show it in your portfolio, because you're not going to want to work on that, and you're not going to be happy once you would get into a position. And if I would ask you to work on something like that, yeah, it might not be what you're applying for. But again, there's different business needs. You never know what project's going to need what. So be cautious to include, just include what you want in your portfolio that you want to be seen for, and you want to, work on, and you're passionate about.
Great answers. Thank you for that. Any follow-up questions on that? Any examples that you guys may have in this area from the participants? Okay, so let's move on to another question. Amanda, do you have any prepared? Amanda?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. So I think we kind of touched on this one, but just to go over it again, when applying for jobs, is quality or quantity more important?
Yeah, quality.
Definitely quality.
Yeah, quality is far more important. I've seen people with dozens of things in their portfolio that are not great. You know, it's just like even some of them that have had two or three great things, and then 5 or 6 not so great things. I would unfortunately judge them on the not so great things too. You know, maybe when you want to archive all your older stuff or something like that. But I think you want the hiring manager to know that you understand what UX is and that you understand the process that gets you to a scientific result. You can have like an archive, this is my old stuff, you know, don't judge me on it or whatever. That's great. Just to show you did things years ago or whatever. But I would say, for the sake of getting hired, you want to show that you understand quality work, and that you can make quality work. And that as a hiring manager, I'm not going to have to hold your hand from day one because it looks like you already know the basics of your stuff. So quality, yeah.
When I'm reviewing portfolios, I will maybe have the time to honestly look through like 1 or 2 case studies. And so even if you have a lot of work, it's not like likely that the person reviewing is going to have time to go through your whole book. So just know that you get like 1 to 3 shots to impress somebody.
I'm not sure if we're answering the right. Amanda, can you repeat the question? In terms of job hunting, is it quality? Like, I guess.
In terms of job searching, when applying for jobs, which is more important, quality or quantity?
There you go.
Job searching.
So I feel like that could be applicable with the portfolio response that we just got, and I think it also can be
quality. Yeah, still quality.
Yeah, I think it can also be applicable to like sending resumes, and like should people be tailoring their resumes, or can they just send like 150 of the same resume to a bunch of different companies?
That's really what I'm getting at. Yeah. Can we ask the question, the person who wrote it in to like clarify what they asked, what they meant?
I think that was an original.
Yeah, that was an original question, but that's how I took the question was.
Yeah, when searching for a job, if you really need a job, blast out your resume. If you really want a great job where you'll be respected and work for a great company and build a great portfolio, and you know, quality jobs are what you're going to look for. And it may be that you have to work in build a portfolio somewhere you don't want to get that job later that you really wanted. I would still say quality. I would still say you want the good jobs. There's good companies around Austin and some remote that you really would have a great career at. And there are companies that you will start looking your first month to get out around town. So, it's, I would say quality. Yeah.
I don't think you have to have it one way or the other necessarily. I think Joel's right in that it depends on what you're looking for. If you're trying to, it depends on what you're looking for. It depends on what you can tolerate, all kinds of stuff. But like, you shouldn't skimp on your portfolio. I don't think ever to try and get more job applications out the door, like because you're going to be saving time, I guess, for the other, like that doesn't make sense to me. What does make sense to me is if you are trying to tailor your resume and your portfolio and or your cover letter to a specific company because you want that one company. If that's what you want to do and that you like, that's all you care about, like by all means, like go for it, go for that one and go for quality. But if you're trying to break into an industry, I feel like quantity is probably the better way to go just because of the numbers game behind it all. Again, you're talking about thousands of applicants going for a single position. So I would just flip that game right back on, in the opposite direction, come up with a resume that speaks to you, and who you are and what your skills are, come up with a cover letter that speaks to you and your skills and your whatever culture you want to fit into, and then apply, and then and same thing with your portfolio, like do the best that speaks to your skills and who you are, so that you can find a match and blast it out to as many people as possible to get that first gig, to get that first experience. Because if someone says no to you because you're yourself in your about me section and they don't like it, well, then that's a good thing. I mean, you're not, you guys are not a match. You're not, I say for that first gig, certainly for that first experience, be true to yourself and go for quantity.
Yeah, I've got to agree with that. Just being someone that kind of just went through that experience. I just really wanted to get into the industry. I didn't like the job I was at, and I had finished the boot camp. I put all this effort into the boot camp and putting a good portfolio together. So it was more just, creating a really good resume that, yes, could be tweaked a little bit, maybe in for each job I was applying to, but it wasn't taking too much time. It was really more just trying to get those out, but definitely taking your time through the process. If through the application process, they ask you specific questions, like put some thought into it for sure, and tailor a cover letter. If you think that's going to set you apart, that's just another way. That's always a mixed topic of, do they read cover letters or not? And every company's going to be different. And when I was looking into it, everyone gave me a different answer. But if it's a way to set yourself apart, then fix a cover letter for a job that you really want. But you also really just got to put the time into focus on getting your information out to as many companies as you can as a young designer trying to break into the industry. I mean, that's really how you're going to find your way, how you're going to get interviews. And even if it's a job you're not super interested in or maybe not qualified for, that interview is just experience for the right one that comes around. So you don't obviously want to say no to experience. So just really putting the effort and getting a lot out is helpful, but keeping the quality there too. You don't want to skimp on it and send a resume that has errors or doesn't apply to the job at all. So keep that in mind.
I have a follow-up question, if possible. Any thoughts on on Medium as a platform for writing case studies and the portfolio site as sort of a repository linking out to it, as a mean to reach more people more immediately, or if that's effective in any way?
I would do the opposite. I would use Medium as the repository and use your portfolio to do more focused pieces. But I think it's great. Like, if you're on more things, you have more visibility, more people can see you. And I think as someone who reviews portfolios a lot, it's nice to see people that take initiative to write on Medium.
All right, guys. Well, we have 5 minutes left, so we can probably do like one more quick question. Does anyone have one? No takers. Well, I have another one on my list. So Augie, you said, did you tailor every cover letter that you sent, or did you use like a templated cover letter when you got your job?
I tried a few different things. I tailored them in certain ways if there were certain aspects about the job that I liked that I think I could be good at. And then for some, depending on how the job description was written, I had like one version that was a little bit more witty and a little more like shows my character, and then another one that was a little more straightforward and serious. Because too, you could definitely judge like the culture of a company by how the job description's written sometimes too. So that would kind of help me judge how I would. So whether it's witty, whether it's straightforward, I had some templates, but definitely tailored them a little bit. And if it was a job I was really interested in, I tailored it even more and really tried to point out like how I could help them and how this experience that I'm explaining to you is going to make a difference at your company. And that's actually one of the ones that I got hired at was, everything I read about the company was really interesting. So I just spent a little extra time on that cover letter. And, I don't know, can't really say if that helped or not, but I think that's just, like I mentioned, another way to set you apart from anyone else is just getting that right in front of them. So templates help, but you don't want them to read it and make it sound like they're reading a template. They could tell this has just been, all you did was change the company name in it. Because I feel like recruiters and everybody, hiring managers, can really tell if it's just a template from your computer that you changed a couple things in.
Yeah, I don't recall ever reading a cover letter. I know I've received some, might have read one or two of them. It doesn't hurt to have one, but it doesn't help me to choose to hire you or not based on that. And it doesn't mean every hiring manager is the same. So there's probably some that are like, I love cover letters, but I find value in the portfolio. Portfolio looks great. Then I go look at your name on your resume. And then I go, okay, resume is not, it's mildly interesting and important, but it looks like you did some great work on your portfolio. So you're probably going to get a call and then we'll have a talk. And then you might get a second call from that. First of all, show you can do the work, make your portfolio nice. But I don't think I've ever read a cover letter or even received hardly any of them either. So I don't know who even gets that.
I read a cover letter once, and it was mostly because I didn't get enough information about the designer really like from their About Me section. And not that I even really always read that. It's just sometimes when you're reviewing like portfolio after portfolio, things kind of just blend together and you start to look for things that are a little out of the norm and interesting. And so that's kind of when you start to differentiate between people. Like if you have 5 books and all of them have a very similar caliber of work, and you're starting to look for other ways to differentiate the candidates on why you might choose, you know, you might look at the About Me section. You might see, did they put together an interesting cover letter? You might look at their resume and see like, where did they work? Maybe that'll give me a way to know which one of these people that I should pick right now. So that's kind of the scenario when I've had to read a cover letter.
And I do agree with you both that, you know, maybe 10 to 15% of mine were read, maybe lower. And that's kind of the feedback I got from people and, you know, mentors that I had asked is, you know, maybe they're not popular or not read, but if you do have the time, it is just an opportunity for another way to set yourself apart. So it's really just, if you want to take the time and know that there's a small chance they'll read it, but if they do, it might get you a phone call outside of, you know, somebody else, especially being new to the industry, not having a ton of experience to back yourself up.
I'm going to go back to my previous answer that I just said about like the numbers game, because I feel like a majority of the people on this call are trying to break into the industry and use a generic cover letter that is not customized to the job unless you like totally feel compelled to go for it and customize it. But like if you create a generic cover letter, a generic everything else, it allows you to apply to like 25, 35 jobs a day. I mean, think about the amount, just the chance increase that you are getting by applying to that many jobs a day. And again, just make it honest, make it truthful to who you are and highlight your strengths and make sure you do a good job of it. But don't sacrifice quality. Just don't spend so much time customizing it for every job, because you will be it will just take that much longer to get that first job in the industry.
I have a question. I know it's probably about to end here. When I started looking for work, looking at LinkedIn and I was applying here and there. And then I started getting all requests from recruiters. You have a great resume, you have a great portfolio, whatever. So we talk, we chat, and we discuss, okay, I'm interested, they're sending it, but boom, I don't hear anything back. I tried to even follow up with few, but they don't even respond back. So I'm really confused about that. Should I try to continue with recruiters, or should I just focus on just LinkedIn, Glassdoor, whatever? Thank you.
Say welcome to the party. That happens to all of us. It's not I don't think that doesn't happen. There's no one here that hasn't happened to, I'd imagine. I usually try to follow up once or twice just to say, hey, can I get some feedback? Have you heard anything? And then I let it drop if it's that situation. If they valued you and respected you, they would get back with you, and it reflects poorly on their company if they don't, but it's just what happens.
But like, should I focus on like looking for job, like posting, applying directly to the companies, or LinkedIn, or?
Yeah, no, it's a combination. So if I have a connection or a potential connection within LinkedIn, I will go through them and say, "Can you refer me?" Or in some cases, I will. If I'm only connected to a recruiter, they're not going to care about any kind of referral bonus. I go and I apply for the job. Then I connect to the recruiter and say, I have applied for the following job that, I feel like I'm qualified for it. If you want to get on the phone and chat today or tomorrow or whatever, I'd love to. And then, but if it's someone, like another designer or something, they may want the referral. So ask them if they'll submit you for a particular job. Those are always the best. And then, if you don't know anybody, you don't think you're going to connect to anybody soon, go ahead and apply. But it's much less likely that you're going to, you're just at one in a stack of a million, that's or 1,000, whatever it may be.
Thank you.
I kind of to piggyback off of that question real quick. I have a portfolio that I'm put a lot of work into. I'm pretty proud of it, but it only has one project. You're talking about applying to 25, 35 places a day. Does that get looked down upon after a point? Maybe you start getting overlooked because you're applying to so many positions and maybe you only have the one project. When is the right time to start applying? I'm somebody that works 50, 60 hours a week in my current industry. So it's hard for me to have three very comprehensive projects that kind of showcase that UX process end to end. When do I know when's the right time for me to start applying for roles? Should I wait to get more projects? Should I?
I would. I don't know if waiting is the right answer, but I think it's optimal to have 2 to 3 projects. Put the time in. Like I said, find a local business, redesign their thing without even just do it on your own. You can even user test around let's say around your house, your office, on Zoom, whatever it may be. You don't have to have do your own research, do your own, what would you click to, what do you think this button's going to do? What do you think is going to happen when you click this button? Okay, we did some user testing. We did X number of my, people who weren't involved in the project, call them that, and get some results, outline your user, do some, if you happen to know any analytics behind their, you may not, that's okay. Use what you can. Do the best you can, make it look good. Pictures of Post-its on the wall, pictures of Post-its on the tables. That's real. Shows you sat down, you thought about things, you worked things out. Put those in there. That's part of the story. Tested it again. That's another great part of the story, because a lot of things don't pass on the first time. So point out that you did test it again and iterate it again. That's great. But I would say 2 to 3 is an optimal amount of portfolio pieces to get your foot in the door. I would say 1 piece. I don't know if I've ever hired somebody with just 1 piece in their portfolio. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen, and you shouldn't not try.
Yeah. If you're working 60 hours a week, it's telling me that you have the diligence to put in the time and the work to build a good portfolio. And once that's done, then to start applying to a shit ton of jobs, like we mentioned, like you mentioned. But yeah, I agree. One isn't going to do it. But I want to go back to one point you said, which is like, is that looked down upon? I was like, my question back to you is, by who? Like I don't know of anyone who's talked about like someone who's applied at a shit ton of jobs. It's not like recruiters are getting together and they're like, yeah, this guy John Reese has applied to like all of our places. Like, what is his problem? Like,
what I mean by, well, maybe I should clarify. So what I mean by that is, again, one fairly comprehensive project, eventually the same recruiter might see your name and go, okay, I already looked at this guy previously. He only had the one project. Even if I do, beef up that portfolio over time, I mean, is that not something I should really worry about? Okay.
I mean, think about like how many portfolios, for those of you who have like done a lot of hiring, I've done a little bit, but I remember looking at so many portfolios. If I saw the same person like twice, even after like 30 days, I would not,
Yeah.
I don't think I would remember it.
I know internal recruiters who have sent me the same rejected person 3 or 4 or 5 times.
Yep.
They're still trying. But it's, no, keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we get so many portfolios and so many applicants that sometimes we pull a handful of them out of there and we're like, okay, this is the handful that then we're actually going to take a review and kind of dig deeper into. And if out of this like group of 10 people, we can't find anyone, then maybe we'll go back to the stack. But like we can't, there's so many.
I think
Thank
when
you.
you only have like one case study too, it doesn't provide the depth. Like I don't always get all the information that I need from one case study. And so I'll open up another one to try and see if, something was different in the other one. And so just being able to showcase a little bit of the diversity and thinking or types of problems that you're solving is helpful.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much to our panelists for coming. I mean, I've had so many people reaching out in the Zoom chat saying how much they've taken from this. So thank you so much for coming tonight and offering your insights and being available for 2 hours of your day. This has been great. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Fun. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Let everyone also to come to our meetup and making it so successful.
yeah, I recorded this, so I'm going to share it. You can send it to your friends who may have missed out. And yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.